So once again, good afternoon. So for today, we will be continuing our discussion to what we call the introduction to Adobe Photoshop. So let's actually start our discussion here by number one, by discussing what we call selections. Simple selections in particular. Now, the selection tool can be seen here. This is actually the tool where we can use the selection tool. The shortcut for selection tool is letter W. Now, selections allow us to isolate a particular portion of the layer. We can then edit the selected region without affecting the rest of the layer. There are many ways in which we can actually generate a selection in Photoshop. Now, say for example, we have downloaded an example photo. This is very important. This is one of the most important tool and concept of Adobe Photoshop. Say for example, we have here a very basic photo. So once we click on Control plus and Control minus, meaning we can zoom in and zoom out the image. So using selection tool, we can now simply select some particular or some parts of our image in which we can simply modify. Say for example, in this case, I would like to delete the background the easiest way. So I can just simply use what we call here the quick selection tool. And by simply clicking on delete button, okay, by simply clicking on delete button, we can now delete the background and it will now look something like this. Diba? Now we have different ways on how we select. Okay, select some parts or portions of our layer. Number one is what we call the magic wand tool. So go here on the left side of your screen, click on this icon and click on magic wand tool. Magic wand is actually located from the fourth top, okay, or fourth from the top in the tools panels and here. Okay. Now, the options here, based on what you are seeing here on top of the menu bar, we have here the following option. It is actually associated with the magic wand tool and it will play an important role in its functionality. Number one, let me discuss what is tolerance. This one. Nakikita nyo itong tolerance, no? Basically, when we say tolerance, it determines how much of the image is selected. When you click on a particular part of your image, a value of 10 simply indicates that the darker values and 5 lighter values will be chosen based on the position where you clicked. Now, let's try to drag or use another image here. See, for example, this one. If we use the magic wand tool, this one, and I will adjust the tolerance into, like, for example, 1. Let's try to see the difference. This is magic wand tool with a tolerance of 1. Okay, this is magic wand tool with a bigger amount of tolerance. This is magic wand tool with much bigger amount of tolerance, like around 50. So what have you noticed? Meaning, the bigger the amount of tolerance, the more pixels it can select, depending on the resolution of your image. Okay? So for example, if I opted to use 10 as a tolerance, probably I can only select those parts of the image I really want. Say for example, in this case. See? That's what we call tolerance. All right. Now, when we say anti-alias or anti-alias, this one, okay, it can be unchecked or checked. It can simply make selection edges smoother. So we can use anti-alias. Let's see. If I use magic wand tool with anti-alias on, it will now look something like that. Pero when I use anti-alias off, it will look something like that. Ano napansin natin? You have noticed that once we turned off the anti-alias option here on top, the selection process or the number of selected pixels are somehow, not really clear, not clean as to compare to the anti-alias on. The edges are much smoother as to compare to the anti-alias off. See? So this is anti-alias on. So kung napansin nyo yung edges natin, mas smooth. Diba? Now, maybe you're wondering, this is a rookie mistake for majority of us, we have, like for example, we have used like a selection tool, and we are really having some problems on how to undo. Kasi you will notice na once you are trying to click some parts of your image, tapos you want to undo something, for example in this case, yan, you will notice that we can only undo like twice, right? Now, by simply clicking on Control D as in dog, that simply means we are now deselecting all. Okay, we are now deselecting all of the all of the selected portions of our image. Gets back? Control D. All right. Next, another tool here is what we call the contiguous. Okay. When this option is selected, basically the only neighboring pixels are selected. When unchecked, all pixels of the chosen tolerance value, and it will be selected. So in this case, yan, we have here the contiguous. Tingnan natin yung difference. Only the neighboring pixels are selected. Again, kapag ka-contiguous po, all of the neighboring layers or pixels are selected. Pero let's turn it off. There you go. You might probably not like notice the difference between them. Pero if you are editing, or if you are using or editing in a multi-layered situation, you will definitely see them. Now, the sample all layers, this one, the sample all layers option here. Now, when this is actually toggled, all of the layers will now be selected. In this case, if this is unselected or unchecked or untoggled, the only layers that will be selected is the layer that is currently pointing, or your working layer in short. Okay, so our working layer here, according to our layers panel on the right side of my screen, the working layer is this one. So every time I click on this layer and I'm trying to select something, and pero if we will now turn on the sample all layers, and this layer is also activated, and if this layer is activated, we can now just simply select everything regardless of what layer is being highlighted here. So the highlighted layer is Johnny Silverhand, this one, although I can now select anything related to this one. There you go. See? That sample all layers. Okay? So there are also other icons in Magic Wand that allow us to make more accurate selection. We have here the create new selection. We have here the add to existing selection. We have here the subtract from selection, and we have here the intersect with selection. Although, based from my experience, I am only using the add and subtract. Say for example, kailan ba siya pwedeng magamit? Let me select this part of the image. Yan. Say for example, I would like to select some more. I can just simply hold shift button. Yan. You will notice that there is a plus icon. Diba? There is a plus icon. Yan. So meaning, if there is a plus icon, you are now trying to add some more. Tries to add some more pixels. Now, if we click on let's say Alt, okay? Alt button. This simply means that we are now deselecting or subtracting the selected portion of our pixels. Again, Shift is for addition. Alt is for subtraction. Ganun siya. Okay, so let's try to use some more photos. Tingnan nga natin kung ano magiging effect niya. Let me choose here some photos. For example, very simple flower. And a simple flower. So, let's use Magic Wand. So, once I click on the pink portion, on this one, lahat ng pink ang na-select, diba? Now, if I would like to add okay, or add this part, this darker pink color in the selection, I can just simply click on plus. If I would like to subtract this portion, I can just simply click on minus. There you go. Diba? Now, there is also another way for us to do this. Say, for example, you would like to change the color. Say, for example, this pink here, you would like to change the color of this one. And try to select the image or the portion you would like to uh, like modify. You can now just simply go to adjustments, to image, go to adjustments, and this time you can now, like for example, let's use hue and saturation. We can actually change the color of the image itself. Okay, di ba? So
Sir,
pwede
excuse me,
natin.
sir.
Yes?
Sir, naglalag ka po sa screen ko, sir, tapos hindi ko po makita yung icon kaya hindi ko po masundan yung ginagawa niyo ngayon, sir. Sorry, sir.
Yeah, it's okay. Siguro sa internet lang natin yan. Anyways, this is actually also recorded so we can rewatch if may part na nagbablur. No? And so let's continue, no? We can change the color of every part. How about say for example, I would like to ito laging natatanong sa akin to eh. Say for example, I would like to use some or I would like to recolor like a real person and this one, diba? Like Brock Lesnar. So let's try to like choose the skin and some parts of the skin. Yes, we can also do the process and we can actually do the same process and we can now change the color of the skin or some parts of the skin you would like to change. So, kung gusto nyo lagyan nyo ng kunwaring effect na may tattoo siya or, kunwaring nasunog, di ba? That's also possible. You can also use selection tool to change the color of your hair and anything. Napakadaming pwede kasing magawa ng selection tool natin. Okay? So that is what we call the magic wand tool naman. Next here, let me also introduce what we call the Marquee. The Marquee tool, this one. The Marquee tool simply allows us to draw basic shapes. So we have here the rectangular Marquee tool. We also have the elliptical Marquee tool, single row and single column. Most of the time, I'm only using rectangular and circular or elliptical Marquee tool. Basically, what it can do is, it's a selection tool pero this time, perfect circle ang gusto nyo ma-select. So, yan o, di ba? So, for example, gusto kong ma-select tong part na to. Itong part lang ng atong circle na to. So, I can just simply click on Control or Control J to simply cut the portion of the image na na-select ko. Diba? So, parang ganun. Same goes through with the rectangular tool. Bawa yan. Control J to cut the image. There you go. So, that's simply how Marquee tool works. Okay? So, we also have here what we call the Lasso. Lasso tool naman, isa sa pinaka effective gamitin when we would like to change the background or remove any backgrounds of any images we would like to remove. So, for example, let me look for some image here and let's try to remove the backgrounds. Ito na lang ulit. Si flower na lang. Yan. See, for example, gusto kong i-remove tong part na to. Ito lang. Itong pink na to. Using the lasso tool, okay, I can now just simply select or highlight the specific part of our image and the specific pixels of our image I would like to delete or I would like to modify. So in this case, for example, I would like to modify this one. Diba? So, pwede natin siyang i-delete and so on. Yan, di ba? So, pwede ko na siyang ma-delete. You can use lasso tool if you would like to, change the background or remove the background of a specific image, for example. Yan, di ba? So we can do that. Pero yun nga lang, hindi pwedeng mouse ang gagamitin mo. You're not allowed to use mouse kasi medyo matrabaho siya and medyo mahirap gamitin pag mouse. Hindi kasi pwedeng pasmado ka pag mouse ang gamit mo. So at least try to use graphics tablet whenever you are trying to, use Lasso tool. Pero uh, in my experience, what I love to use is what we call the pen tool. This is another, this is actually another topic for I think next week, additional topic ito. Pero pen tool is actually a very powerful tool in Adobe Photoshop in which you can create a lot of things using this one. Pen tool simply, for example, I would like to select this portion here, itong yellow na to. By using pen tool, and I can now use pen tool to simply select the specific portions or specific parts of my images. Ayan, di ba? And right click, tapos just click on make selection and hit OK and everything will now be selected. Diba? So kung halimbawa ito gusto ko lang baguhin tong part na to. Itong part lang na to. Using pen tool, you can now do that. And you can actually modify a lot of pixels in pen tool. This will be another topic. And FYI po, this is the hardest tool in Adobe Photoshop to master, pen tool. Ayan, diba? So, make selection, hit on OK, and there you go. Nag-select. Then, let's try to, like, change the color into green. That's possible. Diba? And now, we can actually copy a selected layer item to a new layer. Now, the act of copying a selected item to a new layer is crucial editing technique in Photoshop. And it allows you to work non-destructively and by applying all the edits to a new layer instead of the original pixels. In-introduce ko to sa inyo kanina. See, for example, maglagay tayo dito ng ito. See, for example, this one. We can now, using the lasso tool or any tool, selection tool, for example, we have the magic one. See, for example, I would like to specifically select the clouds and I would like to recopy or duplicate the clouds. We can use the magic wand tool. And by simply clicking on your keyboard the Control J, okay, Control J means duplicate, okay, or simply click on right click tapos layer via copy. Now, if you click on layer via copy, ayan, hindi nyo napapansin yan sa una. Pero nag-create yan ng panibagong layer on the right side. Now, if you use the move tool, you can now see that there is actually a duplicated version of that cloud. Now, you can also duplicate that once again. Use the move tool, duplicate, use the move tool, duplicate, use the move tool. See? You can do that. And you have to make sure that every time you are selecting something in your image, the layer is also being selected here on the right side. So in this case, I would like to duplicate the sun and I'm clicking shift button while holding shift button and click natin yan. And let's click on Control J. There you go. So we can now duplicate the sun. Again, Control J is duplicate. And that's very important, especially for poster makings and everything. Got it? So that is selection tools in Adobe Photoshop. No? Napaka-importante na alam natin ang selection tools, especially when we are editing some things related to any images or ako kasi mostly ini-edit ko lang mga pang magazine style. So talagang gumagamit ako ng selection tools to remove some specific background. So I'm actually I am like I mean tapakita ko lang. I'm a fan of like gaming, so I collect and create a lot of gaming stuff related to to the games I like to play and or I finished in particular. So most of the time gumagawa ako ng napaka-simple layout lang, you know. Tapos sabay benta as NFT, 'di ba? So may mga bumibili kasi niyan. Meron kasi mga mahilig din sa ganyan. Binibili nila as NFT yan. Diba? Yan. So, selection tools, napakalaki pong role niyan sa editing natin. Next, another tool or another thing that I need to mention here is the way on how we choose colors. Okay? Choosing colors. Now, the foreground, let's go here, dito sa may part na to. We have what we call the foreground and background colors. Dito. At the bottom of the tools panel, there are actually two color chips that represent the colors that are currently selected. They're commonly known as the foreground and background colors. Now, if you are planning or if you would like to change the color or if you would like to swap from foreground to background color, you can just simply click on this button, itong arrow na to, or pwede mong i-click si X button mo sa keyboard mo to simply swap from the foreground and the background. Ano nga bang ibig sabihin ng foreground? Foreground simply means it's in the foreground, on top. Background means below. Diba? So we have here set foreground color and set background color. So if you double click on that, you can actually choose some specific colors you would like to choose. For example, I would like to choose a color related to pink. And yeah, if my background is related or if I want my background to be like as green as possible, that's also you can do that as well. So that's the way on how we change the colors. In your module number 1, I introduced the use of color.adobe.com, right? This is, diba? This is actually the way on how we choose or calculate the colors in a very easy way. So for example, if may ginagawa akong project related to graphic designing and I would like my output to have a color that looks something like this. The good thing about this one is you can simply copy the hex values. And nakikita nyo hex values dito. Say for example, let me use this one, this color here. I would like to copy that one. And let me set this one as a background color. So by clicking on X button, yan, I can now change the background color. And using this button here, the copy button, I will now simply paste the value here on the color picker. Color picker. Then click on OK. Using the paint bucket tool, that will now serve as my background. See? Change ulit natin si foreground. See, for example, I would like to use this color as my foreground. And so whenever I will like put something related to graphic designing or anything, pwede nating ma-blend ng mas maayos yung colors natin. Diba? So in this case, let me try to blend the colors here. Yan. Diba? Okay ba ang combination natin? Definitely. Ayan, diba? So, the other accent here, say for example, itong parang black na to, you can use that as another element in your poster. For example, maglalagay ako dito ng background with tapos tanggalin ko yung stroke nito. Let me choose a color related to that one. Yan, this one. See? So pwede, di ba? Pwede mo nang magamit yung iba pang kulay. Yan. So let's try to utilize some more colors. Say for example, here, let me use the BFA 68 color. I would like that color to be as, say for example, the stroke of the word graphic design here. So I can now just simply double click on the layer and I can now just simply choose some layer style, for example, some stroke. I'll paste the color design or the color value here. Makikita natin na naglalagay na yan ng parang border or stroke dun sa image natin. Diba? You can do a lot of things in color, by the way. So we can create a new layer. We can simply adjust the hardness. Tapos pwede na nating malagyan ng konting accent na magmumukhang faded yung color natin. So let me choose other color here. Yung parang, di ba? Parang magmumukha siyang faded ang style. So there you go. So choosing colors. That's very important po. That's actually very important every time you are doing a lot of graphic design projects. Yan. Diba? So, if gusto mo pang mag-try ng other colors, you can do so. For example, if you are into like colorful stuff, like this one, pwedeng-pwede mo siyang magamit pa rin. Like for example, I would like to change the gradient color into something like this red and this blue. So, using the gradient tool, yan. Tapos, yung color natin, I'm simply copying and pasting the color values na gusto ko. Diba? It's as simple as that. For the pasting, copy, paste, and everything. So, I can now use the color na ginamit natin dito. Diba? Itong red and blue na to. Ayan. Diba? So, that's how you choose some colors, by the way, in Adobe Photoshop. Now, next here is what we called rulers or the guidelines and rulers. What's the purpose of guidelines and rulers? By the way, this is very important in any aspect of graphic design. You will actually find using the guides and rulers as a very great help in laying out pages for the web or for print. The options for turning on and off the ruler and guide functions can be found in the view menu here dito. Tapos pwede mong pumunta ka dito kay show. Tapos pwede mong pindutin dito sa grid or you can just simply click on anything here. You can play around with how the way or how they look like. Pero ako personally, I am using the guides and rulers sa graphic design para makita ko kung pantay-pantay nga ba yung mga ginagawa ko. So, by clicking on Control R, for example, Control R, yan. Napansin natin na ang ruler, nagkaroon dito ng ruler on top and sa may left side natin. Now, the the trick here is this one. If you click on the ruler and drag the ruler like downwards, you will eventually see a pixel amount in Y value na gumagalaw din every time you are dragging down the ruler. The good thing about this one, this is actually a guide na tinatawag natin. The good thing about this one is that it will now simply tell you to be as accurate as possible in every types of editing. Yan o, naging blue siya, di ba? See, for example, gusto kong yung poster ko may header dito. Tapos gusto kong meron siyang margin na parang ganyan. Di ba? So, I would like my poster to look something like this one. Using rulers and guidelines, you can do that. Now, the good thing about rulers and guidelines, for example, kapag ka meron ka ng guideline, every time kasi you are trying to modify modify a specific selection, in this case, diba? You have here a rectangle, or I mean a square. By having a ruler and a guidelines, automatic niya na kasing nag-i-snap. Ano, the image or the shape itself is automatically snapping in the ruler. And so it will really helps. Diba? Especially for print media. Pag nandun na tayo sa topic ng print media in which you will create a lot of print media. Say for example like infographics, di ba? So importante po 'yan. Importante 'yan para pantay-pantay yung mga ginagawa nyo. Let me open my Adobe Illustrator here. This is actually my favorite tool for creating some, vector graphics and vector images and creating some infographics as well. I love using Adobe Illustrator because of the guidelines and rulers as well. By the way, I suggest you read more on the module, okay? You read more on the module para at least makita natin kung paano ba talaga ginagamit. And so let me open my previous projects, for example this one. So pakita ko kung paano ko na-apply ang mga ang mga rulers natin. So this is a very simple project that I have created like last week lang. Diba? Ito ba yun? Open natin yung isa. Open recent files. This one. Ay, hindi. PH1 dapat. Open recent files, ph.ai. There you go. Diba? Look at the layers. it actually looks like Adobe Photoshop, pero ako kasi mas komportable akong gamitin 'to. It's because of the fact na mas malinis siya, 'di ba? Now, 'yan 'no, I am using rulers most of the time para pantay-pantay yung mga ano ko, yung mga texts ko, 'di ba? Ano, I love to make sure that all of my shapes, I mean, all of my texts are aligned perfectly. Kung hindi, syempre, aayusin at aayusin ko yan. That's actually my secret as a graphic designer. As much as possible, huwag kayong mahiyang gumamit ng rulers. Make sure na lagi siyang active or lagi siyang nandiyan. Ba? Ayan. So if paano ba pumunta sa Adobe Photoshop para ipakita yung rulers and guidelines? Again, go to view panel here, view menu, tapos click on show, yan, click on guides, click on grid. Pag grid naman, magiging ganyan yan, di ba? Magkakaroon ng parang checkered, I mean, parang small boxes in between. So we also have here like the guides and the grids and the smart guides. By the way, ito yon yung mga blue na yon. Yung nag-auto snap siya, 'di ba? So nag-auto snap na siya. There you go. Okay? So that is what we called the guidelines and the rulers. Next is what we called history. Now, sa history kasi, history, by the way, say for example, you have created a mistake. So, nagaganyan ka, tapos nakakreate ka ng mistake, nagkamali ka, di ba? Did you know that Photoshop can only undo your project, pero it can only undo the last two actions na ginawa mo sa project mo. 'Di ba? So, I'm clicking Control Z. Ayan o, Control Z. Ang nagagawa ko lang is only two, especially sa mga old na versions. If I click on Control Alt Z, yan, pag Control Alt Z naman, nadidelete niya or na-undo niya more than two actions na ang kaya niyang ma-delete. Now, diyan ngayon papasok. Say for example, meron ka ng part or there is actually this kind of process that you have created in Photoshop and you are really trying to undo everything pero unfortunately, you cannot. Diyan ngayon papasok yung history panel natin. Okay? So let's go to window. Let's go to history. Now, the history panel looks something like this. Ito. History panel is where it's actually a separate panel where all of your actions or anything that you have done in your project is actually being saved. Kung naggalaw ka ba ng isang brush, yan, magsasave yan as brush tool. Nag-select ka ba ng isang pixel? Yes, magsasave yan as a lasso tool in your history. Nag-type ka ba ng something? Definitely, masasave yan as another action in your history panel. So, say for example, gusto mong bumalik sa pinakaumpisa na ginawa mo. So, you can just simply click on the option, the very first action that you have created. There you go, di ba? And this is very convenient. Ayan na, yung mga pinagagawa natin kanina, nagpapakita pa rin, di ba? So, this is very convenient, especially for graphic designers because, there is no such thing as perfect, by the way, in graphic design. So you might probably want to go back and try to review what you have done. So dyan papasok ngayon yung history natin. By the way, the default number of history is 20. And the minimum value for history state is actually 1. And at the maximum value is 1,000. You can go ahead and modify this one. Okay? Pwede mo kasing i-modify yung number ng history states na pwede mong masave sa computer mo. Pero that simply depends on, of course, your computer resources, how powerful your computer is. Of course, the more powerful your computer, the more, okay, the bigger or the bigger amount of history states it can be saved. Ito, I can only save, I opted to have like 50 states of history. Diba? So, kung gusto kong 1,000 states yan, possible. So, lahat ng 1,000 actions ko yan. Pero syempre, that will now depend on your resources sa computer mo. So, in my case, I have here a gaming/editing PC. So, definitely, I can always rack up all of the settings na meron ako. So, since I also have my GPU, yan, and I also have a powerful CPU naman. So, kaya-kaya niyang ma-handle. Pero, as a default, 50 lang para okay lang naman. Diba? So, there you go. That's history. Okay. Again, you can use undo, which is Control Z, redo, which is, you know, undo, redo, Control Z, and something like that, diba? As a keyboard shortcut. We also have the step forward and step backwards, which is the Control Alt Z, Control Shift Z na keyboard shortcuts natin. Okay? That is what we call history. Next is what we call cropping. All right, this is also important. Cropping tool. Yan. Cropping, there are two ways in which we can crop a document in Photoshop. The first and most commonly used method is to use what we call the crop tool. The options panel that is associated with the crop tool, ito nakikita nyo dito, is actually unusual in that before the crop tool area is drawn, there are one set of options. See, for example, let me go ahead and open an image here and let's try to crop the image. Ito. Yan. Using crop tool, this one, we have the crop tool. You can now change or you can actually use or choose a specific ratio. Gusto mo ba siya na square? If yes, yan, just simply click on square. Usually yung square ginagamit yan kapag ka 2 by 2, 1 by 1, which is, of course, the same crop ratio na ginamit natin doon sa activity natin, performance check 3.1 natin. Diba? So for example, I would like to crop or I would like to convert this one into a 2 by 2 image. Yan. So using the 1 by 1 ratio, which is the square ratio, and I'll hit on enter or this click or check button here. Yan. Pwede na natin siyang makrop. Diba? Nakrop na siya ng ganyan. Pwede ka rin gumamit pa ng iba pang ratio. For example, like pang phone lang. Pang post lang sa FB or sa TikTok. Diba? So, pwede mo na siyang magawa. Ayan. So, kung gusto mong pahiga naman, drag mo lang din ng pahiga yung yung mouse mo. Okay lang din yan. Or, dito, pagpalitin mo yan. Ayan. There you go. Diba? Click on enter. You can now change the ratio. Okay? So, there are lots of ways to crop an image. Diba? Or, a lot of ratio that you can choose on. Parang dito. Diba? Now, let's also talk about what we call resizing to a specific size. Resizing, enlarging, and compressing. I mentioned this in your performance check 3.1. Pero para may idea kayo, let me show you. We can resize your image to different size. Say for example, we have here this one. This wallpaper here. Yan. Paano nga ba natin makikita kung ano ang size ng isang image na in-upload natin or nilagay natin sa Photoshop? So, first of all, you can go to Image tab dito sa taas and you can go to Image Size. So, according here, the image size has a size of 16.667 inches and 9.375 inches. So, ibig sabihin pala, kapag print mo to, pwede siyang mag-print na ganyan. But the question here is that, for example, I would like to adjust the image into a smaller, okay? Into a smaller value. So for example, ito gusto kong pang phone lang. We can now just simply click on or change this one into pixels. Yan. So it will automatically be converted into its corresponding pixel amount. So in this case, ang 16.667 by 9.375 with 72 pixels per inch resolution can be converted into 1200 pixels by 675 pixels. So, ibig sabihin, medyo maliit pala siya. So, kung gusto ko siyang medyo mas maliit pa, I can now just simply, resize this one. For example, gusto kong kalahati. Yan. 600. Diba? So, nung pinindot ko yung 600, automatic na nag-adjust yung height niya because of this button here. Now, make sure that if you are constraining the aspect ratio, remember that you are also, that simply means that you are also automatically changing the values of height at the same time. So, constraint siya. Kapag ka naka-unlock yan, pag naka-unlock yan, you can only change the value of, like for example, the width. Diba? Pero kapag ka naka-constraint yan na ganyan, automatic yung ratio niya ang nagka-constraints. So for example, in this case, I would like to have like a 600 width. Tapos yung height niya automatic, di ba? So there you go. What's the advantages of resizing? Of course, para bumaba yung number one, para bumaba yung file size natin. So for example, if gusto natin siyang i-upload sa ibang platforms na mas maiksi or mas kailangan ng mas maliit na file, you can do that. That is image size. Take note, you are adjusting the image itself. Alright? Now, you can also adjust what we call the canvas size. Okay. Canvas. Anong ibig sabihin naman ni canvas? Take note that you only adjusted the image, not the canvas itself. Canvas simply means the entire canvas or the entire canvas where your image is actually placed. Imagine a painting, di ba? A painting has a canvas. Yung painting nasa ibabaw, yung canvas nasa ilalim. Same goes through with Photoshop. Once I remove, take note once I remove this image here, napansin nyo that there is still a canvas behind it. So once you try to resize the canvas itself, you are not resizing the canvas, but rather you are only resizing, you are not resizing the image, but you are resizing where the image is actually placed. Now, for example, I would like to have the width as doubled and the height as doubled as possible. Look at the difference between them. There you go. See? Napansin ba natin yon nung nag-adjust tayo ng canvas? We only adjusted the canvas of our image. Unlike earlier, now we are adjusting the image itself. Say for example, pag to 2400 pixels yan, I'm adjusting the image itself, the image quality. For canvas, I'm only adjusting there you go. So, sir, paano kung gusto kong i-print itong wallpaper na to sa long bond paper? So, number one, go to image, change the canvas size, and this time into inches, try to put there the width and the height as 8.5 by 13, which is actually long bond paper in the Philippines, right? So, kung napansin nyo, we can now go ahead and rotate the image there and make sure na magkasya yan dyan. Take note, you are not allowed to rescale you are not allowed to resize your image na nakastretch siya. Never ever do this. Okay? Yung ganito po. Never ever stretch your image in graphic designing. Pagtatawanan po kayo. For example, ito, kung gusto mo siyang medyo full siya, di ba? Yung igaganyan mo siya, no, please, do not do this one. Yung i-stretch mo yung image para lang magkasya. Never ever do that in graphic design. Instead, always adjust the scale of your image. So, for example, ito, paano nga ba ulit mag-adjust? Control T, as in Tango. So, Control T, lalabas dyan yung transform tools natin. So, by holding shift button while adjusting, yan. So, pwede ko na siyang ma-adjust sa ganyan. But never ever stretch po. Yung parang gaganyan nyo siya. Oh. Ganyan kasi yung lagi ko nakikita sa inyo. Yung mga rookie mistake natin na ganyan. Diba? Never ever do that. Okay? So that's how you resize your image here. Now, let me also emphasize here the resolution. The default resolution of Adobe Photoshop is 72 resolution, 72 dots pixels per inch. Meaning, the higher the resolution, the higher the amount of resolution, the higher the quality of your image is. So, in my PC, of course, tinotodo ko yan ng 150 or 300. Tingnan natin ha. So, I'll create a new document. For example, ang pixels natin, gusto kong kasing laki ng pixel ng monitor ko. 2160 by 1440. And the resolution is of course 150. If I will create that one, it will simply produce a very big, yung mga TARP quality na yan. Diba? Mga pang TARP quality na yan na image. And by hovering your mouse dito sa may lower left corner ng Adobe Photoshop natin, makikita natin kung ano yung value ng width, height, and resolution natin. We can also check at the current size of our document. For now, this is 8.9 megabytes. Diba? So medyo malaki yung file. 8.9 MB. Kasi 150 resolution. Take note, you have to be careful when choosing resolution. Huwag ka pong masyadong maghangad na mataas sa resolution, especially if you're using only a laptop. Because, by adjusting the resolution at max resolution, for example, 300 to 600, like mga TARP quality, of course, there is a chance that your computer might crash, will crash. Okay, so be very careful on adjusting the resolution. Let's stick to the default of 75, especially for you guys, di ba, na nag-uumpisa pa lang naman sa Photoshop. Ako kasi I'm using 100, 200, 100 to 300 resolution. Kapag ka mga TARP quality, 650 mga ginagamit ko. Para kapag ka na-print yan, quality talaga. Okay? So that is resolution. And last here is what we call correcting, yung pag-correct ng red eye natin. Although hindi na masyadong nakikita to, no, yung red eye removal natin. Let me show you how to do that. Let us download some pictures or images here. Girl with blemishes. Yan. So, lagi nating na i-encounter to. Paano nga ba tayo magpapaganda ng mukha natin sa Photoshop? Yan. Di ba? Adjust natin. Pagkasya natin yan dito. Gitna natin. Okay. So, the good thing about correcting or photo correcting in Adobe Photoshop, it's really easy to do nowadays. So, let me show you how to do that. Unfortunately, wala tayong red eye dito sa picture natin. Saka na natin pag-aralan ng red eye. Pero let's go here. Dito sa may tool na to, we have the spot healing brush tool, healing brush, patch tool, content aware, red eye tool. So if we click on red eye tool, I can now just simply click on the eye and automatic it will now convert the eye into something. Diba? Yung red eye basically mapapaitim niya ulit yan. As simple as that. Pero ang focus natin dito is the spot healing brush tool. Yung spot healing brush tool, it's actually a tool for us to basically remove all of our skin problems. Yeah, there you go. So this is actually the greatest way on how we make ourselves as clean looking as possible. Diba? So automatic kasing nagbe-blend yan eh. Ayan. Diba? So syempre ayusin mo pa yan. Ayusin mo yan. Spot healing yan. Nag-download pa tayo dito ng iba. Yung mga talagang totong mga ganitong mukha. Ayan. So using the spot healing brush tool, there you go. We can now remove instantly all of like her pimples or any parts na madumi sa mukha mo. You can now remove them by simply clicking on them. Diba? That's spot healing brush tool. Ang healing brush tool, it's actually almost the same. Pero this time, ang healing brush tool kasi, you have to choose for a resource or a source. Halimbawa, gusto mong yung i-heal mo kasing kulay ng isang part ng image mo. So for example, in this case, ito. Gusto kong tong part na to, ito nakikita nyo tong itim na to, no? Kasing puti yan nito. Nitong part na to. So by clicking on Alt button, I am choosing a specific source. Yan. Tapos, there you go. Automatic niyang nalilinisan. Mas maayos. Kumbaga, mas accurate kasi ito. Diba? Mas accurate ito. Ako as a person with a mole, lagi kong tinatanggal yung nunal ko, which is very, very easy to do nowadays. Diba? Lalo kayo, pwede nyo namang matry yan kung gusto nyo gawin. You can remove moles. Diba? Download tayo dito ng boy with mole. We can now remove. Ito. Diba? We can now remove the mole of anyone using, of course, spot healing brush tool. Diba? Or yung healing brush tool natin. Pag healing brush tool natin, hanap ka lang lagi ng katabi niya na skin para maging pantay siya. Oops. Somewhere dito. Somewhere dyan, di ba? So, magic. You can also change the color of your hair, as I have mentioned. So, for example, gusto mong palitan yung kulay ng hair mo. Again, just simply go to Lasso tool, for example. Create a new layer. Highlight the hair parts na gusto mong kulayan. Bawa ito. Diba? Then, for example, gusto kong kulayan niya ng blonde. Siyempre, gaganyan ko muna yan, di ba? So, for the next meeting kasi, this will be your next topic, the layer blends na tinatawag natin. So, nakulayan natin ng blonde, no? Pero hindi pa natatapos dyan. We can now double-click on the layer. Okay? And we can now just simply use what we call the blending of anything. Ito pala, itong layers dito. So, we can simply multiply. We can overlay the colors. Pero I prefer using multiply para mag-blend talaga siya. So, napansin nyo, nag-change yung color niya. So, we have here multiply. And I can now just simply remove or erase the parts na magmukhang maayos. Yan. Para mas maging clean yung ano natin. See? So, you can actually change the color of your hair. You can even change the color of your eye using the Marquee tool, elliptical Marquee tool. So, let's highlight the layer na we are editing. Let's use the elliptical Marquee tool. Let's point the Marquee tool dun sa mata niya mismo. Let's choose a color. For example, gusto nating red kasi may sharingan siya. Yeah. Let's draw in other layer. Ito. Tayo sa other layer niyan. Ganun din dito. Diba? So, I will now adjust the layer. Ayan. The layer blending. So, for example, gusto ko ng kontento na ako dito kay overlay. Ayan. So, I'm gonna remove some parts of the eye para mas maging matino siya. Ayan, para lang mas maging matino siya. So, you can actually do a lot of things in Photoshop. For as long as you know how to do or you know how to use Photoshop, your imagination is your only limit. Okay? So, pwede ko pang i-adjust yung balance ng color natin. Gusto kong medyo mag-light pa siya or yan. Medyo brownish pa yung style ng ano niya. I will adjust the levels of the eye color, everything. So basically, you can do a lot of things in Photoshop. So pwede rin yung mismong bibig or the lips itself using the Marquee tool or the Lasso tool itself. For example, gusto mo lang etong part na to. Diba? Kulayan mo lang yan ng red. Okay? Change the layer blend into like multiply or let's say lighten. There you go. Adjust the opacity para mag-blend talaga lalo yung ano natin. Adjust the levels. And there you go. Even the skin tone. A lot of things. Napakadami pong pwedeng magawa sa Photoshop, di ba? So I think that will be the last part of our discussion for today. I introduced the basics on how to use Photoshop overall. Any questions so far before we proceed with our next part of the discussion, which is your performance check? Questions? Okay, I think wala naman, no? So, sige, kung may question lang kayo, you can go ahead and interrupt me or just type your questions in our chat box. Ayan. So, punta tayo dito sa may dito. Okay. So, your performance check. We have two performance check for this week. Number one is actually for you to create or prepare a photo of you. Again, you will only use your own photo on this one. Sarili mong photo, ha? I suggest for the performance check 3.1, choose your photo which is in half body. Half body lang. Okay? Because we will be converting that into a printable ID version. Bakit nga ba natin di ginagawa? Pansin nyo, magkano yan sa studio? Diba, mahal? Putin tayo ng 60, 70. Gusto nyo makatipid? Diba? So, try to look for some photos at home. Siguro mga graduation photos nyo na pwede nyo magamit. Yan. And you can actually convert that into a printable version like this one. So, using Photoshop pa rin yan. Ang tawag dito, you can do this also in Photopea, by the way. Pwedeng sa Photopea rin siya magawa. Alright, so that is your performance check 3.1. All of our topics or all of the things I mentioned for today and from the previous discussion, the part 1 discussion, is basically the application of everything, especially dito sa activity natin na to. This is the application of everything. Okay, this is the basic. That's performance check 3.1. Now, for the performance check 3.2, this is one of the most important thing that you should master as a beginner of Photoshop. Always try to change the background and try to blend your background into, of course, your picture itself. So this time, you have to prepare a photo which is in full body. Kanina half body lang. Kasi ang kailangan lang natin yung hanggang sa breast part, di ba? So this time, choose a photo which is your favorite photo most likely and think of a dream place of yours. Pag-iisipan mo kung ano yung dream place mo ba, kung saan mo gustong pumunta all around the world, anywhere, 'di ba? And we will be merging them together as one. Okay? So I have indicated here the step-by-step process on how to do that. And po, 'di ba? Especially on how we adjust the image size and everything. Okay, now another thing that I have to mention to all of you guys is asan yan? Your next activities, okay? For your next activities for the next week kasi, especially ito, sa course outline natin, we will now be proceeding with what we call the photo manipulation techniques. Okay, so magdi-discuss tayo dito ng mga photo manipulation techniques. I will be uploading a series of tutorial, okay, a video tutorial on how to manipulate or create some photo manipulation techniques such as double exposure, yung mga ganyan. Ito na, umpisahan na natin changing ng background. Face swap is another photo manipulation technique, di ba? Face swapping, siguro digital painting, pen tool, uh, coloring, and many more. Alright, so for face-to-face classes, medyo advantage sila sa part na to kasi they will experience the graphics tablet. For online synchronous classes, of course, you don't have to worry because there is also an alternative way pa rin naman to do the photo manipulation techniques and expect to have a lot of activities for photo manipulation technique. Okay, since this is the last module for midterms. Any questions so far? None?